My name's Andy. This is my wife, Pam. We are transplanted Yankees, by the way. That's why we talk funny, just to let you know. And I grew up in Michigan. My wife grew up in British Columbia, and we met in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where we also met some tall, skinny guy. He was really young at the time, named Rod and Gail. And Rod and I actually worked together in a Red Food warehouse. He was a forklift driver, a loader for the trucks, and I brought the pallets to him. So he was the one who complained that I didn't stack it properly. So that's how I knew Rod. We left from there in Chattanooga and went to China for 2 years in 1984 to 86. Came back and went to Dallas, and lo and behold, there was this tall, skinny guy named Rod and his wife Gail at Dallas Seminary. And so I think he was stalking us. I'm not sure. He was following us somewhere. After Dallas Seminary, we went to Romania. We were there from 1996 until 2018, so 22 years. For 10 years, I flew back and forth working at a missionary training school in Union Mills, North Carolina, in the hills of Appalachia, just this side of Asheville. And then we moved there full-time in 2018, and ever since then, we've been teaching new missionaries how to go out and learn the language. My wife runs the language learning program, and how to learn the culture, how to share the gospel in another context, in another culture and conditions and all those things. Very complicated task, but we love it. As you probably just heard, we went through a lot of transitions, and I think that's pretty normal for missionaries. We just do that all the time. We're on the move, we're learning new things, new languages, new cultures. As individuals, we all go through transitions all the time, don't we? And some are more significant than others. For me, the big transition I remember when I was 16, or 15 actually, I got my driver's license. Oh, that was so cool. And then I remember my dad gave me his old car. I was 16, and it was a 1972 Rally Nova. My dad was a pit mechanic for his brother, who was a race car driver back in the 1930s. So my dad put headers on it, thrush pipes down the side, and I was in high school with a hot rod. Oh, it was great. Transitions. Love it. Then you graduate from high school, you go off to college, another transition, you get married. That's a big transition, isn't it? Now, I came from a family of 6 boys, no girls, except for my mom. She doesn't count, okay? I was the youngest. My wife was the oldest. Transitions, let's not say any more about that. You know how that goes, okay? So transitions of getting married, moving, things you do as individuals. As families, you go through transitions, don't you? That first baby comes along, and guys learn how to pretend they're asleep very, very well when the baby's crying. This is how it works, okay? So as families, you go through transitions. Your kids grow up. They cost more and more money as they get older. They go to college, and they cost even more money. Transitions. And they go through transitions. As individuals, as families, we go through transitions. As churches, you go through transitions. Songs change, music's change, style change, dress changes. But I have to tell you something. You have really been blessed. And even apart from the fact that I know Rod, you have had the same pastor for 30 years. That is amazing. We have 25 churches that support us, and I think we've outlived all of them except one. So that is unusual these days to have that. Churches go through transitions. Cultures and countries go through transitions. Boy, have we gone through transition in the past few years. But I remember the first time we came back to the States, and the Bluetooth phone things had come out, and I had never seen one. Romania did not have that. And I'm in the aisle in Walmart, and I'm walking behind a guy, and I thought he was talking to himself. And then I'm driving my car, and I look, the person next to me is talking to himself. And I thought the entire country had gone crazy. Transitions. We all go through them. Sometimes they're big transitions. Sometimes they're little transitions. Sometimes they're traumatic transitions. When I think of a person in Scripture who went through a lot of transitions, a lot of traumatic ones, it would be the life of Joseph. Turn, if you would, to Genesis chapter 37. We're going to look at the life of Joseph. And if there's anyone who went through transitions, and big ones, and ups and lots of downs, that was him. You remember the story. There was a man named Jacob. He had 12 sons, one daughter. Daughters don't count, apparently, just had one, okay, like my family. Okay, 12 sons. And the second to the youngest was named Joseph. He was 17 years old when the story starts. He's got a little brother, apparently a good bit younger, named Benjamin. Okay, so 12 boys, and you have Joseph. So in verse 1:37, it says, Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah, the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them, his brothers. Now, what do we call that? Tattletaling, right? Now, as the youngest of 6, I understand that very clearly because it's a God-given responsibility of the youngest to tell your parents everything the older ones are doing. I mean, that's just what you're supposed to do. I remember I was about 10 and my brother broke the neighbor's plate glass window with a baseball. I was so overcome with guilt, I had to tell Mom all about it, you know. I think he's finally forgiven me, but I'm not sure about that. So you had the youngest son here, and when you bring a bad report to Dad about your brothers, that's not a very good way to endear yourself to your brothers, is it? They tend to not like that, okay? So Genesis chapter 37, verse 3, now Israel, or Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he was born to him in his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe. That's not a very good way to endure your brothers to you, is it? When you have favorite kids like that. It tends to lay the foundation for conflict. Verse 4, when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Verse 5, Joseph had a dream. We were all, and he tells his brothers, by the way, we're all binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Okay? Now, you would think that's not a very good story to tell your brothers, is it? Especially when there's this tension already, and you tell them, oh, by the way, I had this dream, and all you guys are going to bow down to me one day. And they say to him, you really think we're going to bow down to him? And they probably said something like, you snot-nosed little brat. Okay? It's not exactly what they said. But they did say to him in verse 8, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule over us? By the way, that's called sarcasm. It is in the Bible. And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. Wow. A little bit of tension in the family, wouldn't you say so? Now, given their reaction to that dream, you would think Joseph would keep his mouth shut. No. He's 17, okay? He's kind of thick-skulled. So he tells them, then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers, and he says, listen, hey, guess what? I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. Wow, can you imagine? That's cool. Even Mom and Dad are going to bow down to me. Now, his brothers didn't take that very well. They didn't take the first one very well. They didn't take the second one very well. He was the favorite son. He had this fancy coat. And so they get a little bit upset with him. Now, let's give him a little credit, though. Joseph, a little credit, though. He accepted his dreams with childlike simplicity, okay? He didn't understand exactly what they meant, but he just accepted them. Wasn't too wise to tell his brothers, but it was a little naive. But we're going to find out they were true. And he understood who God was, and he believed he knew God's will for him, and most of all, he had a lot of faith in his God, even when he was only 17. But things sure didn't turn out the way he expected. He didn't understand this dream, but something was going on there. His brothers were going to bow down to him. He's going to be a leader or something. But that's not how it turned out. At least not at the beginning. He was about to have a huge transition in his life, and not one he was going to enjoy. So sometime later, not so long that his brothers forgot those 2 dreams, his father sends him out to check on his brothers. Now, I don't even know if that means check on them if they're doing something wrong or just bring them lunch. I'm not sure. So he's trotting across the desert looking for his brothers by himself, and his brothers see him in the distance. 37:19. Here comes that dreamer. Come now, let us kill him. Boy, that escalated quickly, didn't it? Okay? Let's throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Boy, you got to hate your brother bad, don't you, when you want to kill him like that? The oldest brother, Reuben, wanted to rescue him later, so he says, hey guys, let's not do that. Let's just throw him into this cistern over here, and then let's see what happens. Okay? So maybe he wants to save him later, and Reuben's thinking maybe he could later on. So imagine the situation. You're your father's favorite son. You got this fancy coat. You walk up to your brothers. They grab you. They rip it off of you. They throw it into a cistern, probably 10 or 12 feet deep. And you overhear them plotting to kill you. Talk about having a bad day. He was having a bad life, wasn't he? Not a good day. Probably not exactly what he was expecting to happen the morning when he woke up. And I can imagine him sitting at the bottom of that pit, cold, naked, confused, and hearing his brothers plotting to kill him and asking himself, why? God, I thought you were in control. God, why are you allowing this to happen? What did I do? Why is this all happening to me? But even in the midst of our trials, when the day seems darkest, when we don't feel like God is there anymore, like the song we just sang, He is there and He has not forgotten us. He's watching, and although our plans may not jive with His, we can rest assured His plans are perfect. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy when God takes us through trials. God never promised us a rose garden. And God does love us and does have a wonderful plan for our lives. But that plan may include a lot of hardship. God never promises us that we won't go through it. He only promises us that He'll be with us there while we go through it. And that life, those transitions that you go through, may be a lot of hard things, a lot of hardships, a lot of heartaches, and it may well include a pit or two, like Joseph. So the brothers sit down, they eat their meal, they look up, and they see a caravan of Ishmaelites coming through on their way to Egypt. And these are slave traders, okay? So Judah, the number 4 brother, now is he trying to help, or is he just trying to make a fast buck? I'm not sure. So he says, hey, what will we gain if we kill our brother? Let's just sell him instead. Wow, that's kind of brotherly love, isn't it? Let's not kill him. Let's just sell him as a slave. So he does. He says, come, let us sell him and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother. Let's not kill him. Let's just get rid of him. Such brotherly love. So they got Joseph's robe. They slaughtered a goat, and they dipped the robe in blood. Now, this is really hard to imagine. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's. Can you imagine doing that to your father? Pretending your brother is dead? And the grief you're about to put your parents through? That shows you how much they hated their little brother Joseph. To do that to their own father. Talk about having a rough time. He wasn't just having a bad day. Joseph was about to have a bad life, at least for a number of years anyways. So he's pulled out of the cistern. He's chained. He's thirsty. He's probably attached to other slaves, marching through the desert on the way to Egypt, which is a good long ways away, days if not weeks, walking. And I could imagine him looking up at the sky and going, hello, is anybody there? God, I didn't understand those dreams, but I don't think they included this. My brothers want to kill me. Now they've sold me into slavery. God, what in the world are you doing? What's going on? Where are you? I don't see you. I don't hear you. I don't feel you. I think at that point, Joseph was not very thrilled about the idea of transitions. But even when he felt betrayed, and he was, even when he felt hated, and he was, even when he felt there was no one there, and humanly speaking, there weren't, God was there. Chapter 39. The Lord was with Joseph. When his master, this is Potiphar, this is an Egyptian official, captain of the guard, so fairly high up. Joseph's one of his slaves. When his master Potiphar saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, he put him in charge of his household and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. Things are starting to look a little better, aren't they? Now, technically, he's still a slave. He's a servant. But at least he has some freedom here. He has some responsibility. And he's probably thinking, well, okay, maybe God was taking a nap and just kind of forgot. But things are starting to look up for him, at least. Then what happens? Just when he thinks things are getting better, that nice tan he got in the desert and that six-pack abs he had got him into trouble. Now, Joseph, chapter 39, verse 6, was well-built and handsome. Remember, he's 17, 18 years old. And after a while, his master's wife took notice of him. And she says, one day he went into the house to attend to his duties, and none of his servants were there. So she caught him by his cloak, or his robe. It's interesting how robes are a theme through this story. He loses his robe. He's given another robe. It's taken away from him. And she says to him, come to bed with me. But what did Joseph do? Something smart. He didn't debate with her. He didn't argue with her. He didn't try to calm her down. What did he do? He ran out the room. It's kind of like when you're on a diet, you don't walk close to the donut shop. Okay, you walk the other direction. So he ran. And I bet he's thinking, even when I do what's right, things go wrong. What did I do? I was a responsible servant. My master entrusted me with everything in his household, except his wife, and she tries to seduce me. So what happens? She falsely accuses him of him being the person trying to make the advances when it was really her. So Potiphar, what he does, he throws him in prison. Chapter 9, verse 21 says, while Joseph was there in prison, it says what? The Lord was with him. This is the second time it says that. He was right there with him all the time. And the Lord showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So Joseph is put in charge of the prisoners. And two of those prisoners happen to be the royal cupbearer. So this is the guy who tastes things to make sure that it's not poison. And the royal baker. Okay, these are two of the prisoners he's in charge. Joseph has pretty much freedom within the prison. He's checking on the prisoners and doing things for the warden. So he's like the number 2 guy, even though he's a prisoner. Why? Because the Lord has blessed him. And most importantly, because he's with him. And he walks in one morning and he saw that the cupbearer and the baker were dejected. They were just down, sad. So he asked them, why do you look so sad today? So they tell Joseph the dreams they have. Notice the dreams are also a theme to this story. So the cupbearer in 40, verse 13, says and Joseph interprets the dream for him, says, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. Wow, hey, great news. Okay? So the baker is like, hey, I had this story too, this dream. What does that mean? And Joseph says to him, within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head, not up, lift off your head. He gets kind of graphic here. And he will impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Oh, that sounds exciting. So the cupbearer is set free. The baker is taken out, executed. Joseph correctly interprets their dreams for them. And he reminds the cupbearer as he's being released from prison to go back to Pharaoh's court. Hey, don't forget me, okay? Would you mind saying something to Pharaoh for me? I was falsely accused, and maybe Pharaoh can do something and help me out here. Then what happens? Verse 23 in chapter 40, the chief cupbearer who had just been freed, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. For 2 full years, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. the very man who saved his neck. How could you forget somebody like that? But God had a plan. For 2 full years, the cupbearer forgets the very man who saved his neck. Joseph is still stuck in prison, and Joseph is probably starting to question God again. Is God really in control? God, are you really there? God, do you hear me? What about that plan you had for my life? My brothers want to kill me. I'm thrown in a pit. I'm sold into slavery. Things start to look up. I'm falsely accused. Now I'm in prison. And the guy who I helped save totally forgets me. The cupbearer may have forgotten Joseph, but did God? No, not at all. So 2 full years have passed, and then Pharaoh has a dream. Again, another dream going through the story. A dream from God. And Pharaoh dreams he's standing on the Nile River, when out of the river there comes up 7 cows, sleek and fat. And they grazed among the reeds. And after them, 7 other cows, ugly and skinny. They come up and they eat the fat cows. Yes, it's a very weird dream. I know, okay. Maybe he had some pizza the night before, I'm not sure. But it was a weird dream. And he can't understand it. And then he has a second dream. And that dream has 7 healthy grains, stalks of grain, and 7 slumped over. Notice the grains are coming back in the dreams too. And in the morning, the Pharaoh is troubled, and he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt, and they had a bunch of them. Pharaoh tells them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. And then finally, the cupbearer remembers there was this guy in prison who could interpret dreams. He interpreted mine correctly, and he interpreted the baker's correctly. So they hurry off, pull Joseph out of prison, clean him up, give him a good shave his head like Egyptians do, probably put some makeup on his eyes like they did back then. And they bring him before Pharaoh. Pharaoh tells Joseph his dream, and what does Joseph do? He interprets it correctly. He says, there will be 7 years of great abundance in the crop, and coming throughout the land of Egypt, but then that will be followed by 7 years of famine. And actually, Egyptian records show something happening like that about the time that Joseph was alive. So then Pharaoh dressed him in a fancy robe, and I'm sure it was even fancier than the one his dad had given him, puts a gold chain around his neck, and makes him second in command in all of the government. So he's like the vice president. Vizier was his actual title. He gives him a fancy chariot to ride in, and now Pharaoh is number 2 in the government of the superpower of the day. The little 17-year-old kid with a fancy coat. And he's probably not that old at this time. He's maybe 30 years old. So he's got this fancy chariot. He's in charge of all things going around. And he has 13 years of transition, ups and down, because we know he was about 30 when this happened. And even though things are looking up, he's probably still wondering why. What is this all about? Why are these ups and downs happening to me? Why am I in this position now? He still has another 14 years to go, 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine before he's finally going to understand what God was doing. You add that together, it's about 27 years of wondering in his life. There's this massive famine in Egypt. The famine is so great, it also includes Canaan. Who lives in Canaan? His old dad, his 11 brothers. The famine's even there, and so Joseph's father, Jacob, sends his 10 sons, not Benjamin. Why doesn't he send Benjamin? He already lost one young brother. He doesn't want to lose his youngest brother. And Jacob is still doing the same thing. He loves Benjamin even more than the other brothers. So he doesn't send him. He sends the 10. And then Joseph says to him, he recognizes him when they walk in. Now, they did not recognize Joseph. As far as they're concerned, he's probably dead. And he's dressed like an Egyptian. He's speaking Egyptian. He's got a royal robe on of some sort. And he recognizes them. And they don't recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them, and he says to them, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." And then he puts his brothers through a series of tests. Remember the tests? He puts some gold coins mixed in with the grain. They come back. He demands they bring Benjamin back. They bring Benjamin. He puts a gold cup in Benjamin's sack. Why was Joseph doing that? Was he just being a mean brother? I don't think so. He was testing to see if they had changed. Had they repented of what they had done to him? Were they different men than they were 15, 17 years ago? And he finds out they were. Because the very one who led the betrayal of him back at the cistern when he was sold into slavery, his brother Judah, pleads with Joseph. And he says to Joseph, "Now then, please, let your servant, me, Judah, stay here as your slave in place of the boy, Benjamin. Let Benjamin return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me?" What a different man he was. He was willing to tell his father some 20 years previously that your son is dead when he knew he wasn't. But now Judah is willing to sell himself into slavery to save his little brother Benjamin. And that is what Joseph wanted to see. His brothers had changed. What was Judah remembering when he said that to Joseph? "Take me as a slave. I can't go back without my little brother." He was remembering 20 years ago when he lied to his father that Joseph was dead. The irony of it is he's standing before Joseph right then. What a powerful story. The very son he was now standing before. This is, I think, one of the most emotional parts of the story, chapter 45. Joseph can't take it any longer. He tells all the Egyptians to leave the room. He switches to Hebrew so they understand him. And he says, "I am your brother Joseph." Now, imagine the brothers. This is a guy who could have their heads cut off with just a blink of his eye. And Joseph knows that. And he senses that. And he says to them, now he's got to poke one last time because he's the little brother. He says, "The one you sold into Egypt, remember that?" Okay? But he says, "Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." He goes on in verse 7, "God sent me ahead of you to save your lives by a great deliverance." Now, if I was Joseph, I would have said, "God sent me ahead of you to save you bums." But he doesn't say that. He says to save your lives. Verse 8, "So then it was not you who sent me here, but God." 3 times he says, God did it. And Joseph finally understands those dreams he has as a kid. Because I guarantee you, when his brothers first came into that royal court, what did they do? They bowed down before him. And I'm sure that dream flooded back into his mind, especially when he recognized his brothers. And all of those ups and downs of his life, wanting to be killed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten, left to rot. It suddenly, 20-some years later, made sense. Because even when he couldn't hear God, God was there. Even when he felt totally alone, even when he felt no one cared, even when he felt totally abandoned, even when he felt and was forgotten and left to rot, he wasn't alone. Someone did care. He wasn't abandoned, and he wasn't forgotten. Through all of that, because God was always with him. The Lord was with Joseph every single step of the way. Joshua chapter 1 verse 5 says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." the promise of Joseph to Joseph from God, the promise to Joshua from God, is also true for us today. Hebrews 13:5 says, never, and you can underline that, by the way. You can put it in all caps if you want. It says, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And who's he talking to? Us, today. Matthew 28, verse 20 says, I am with you always. Does that mean sometimes? Does that mean most of the time? No, that means always. To the very end of the age, for eternity. God is saying he'll never leave us, forsake us, and always be with us. Let's look at Romans chapter 8, verse 28 for a minute. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. This verse is one of the most misquoted verses, by the way, because we tend to quote it by saying, and we know that in all things God works for good. Does it say good or does it say the good? It says the good of those who love him. Now, let me explain that by talking about parents. Sometimes your parents have to punish you, don't they? And what do they say? This is for your own good. It doesn't mean they don't love you. They do still love you, but sometimes the things that happen to us are not pleasant. They're not good in the sense that they're easy and they're enjoyable and they're fun, but they're good in the sense that they're for our good to draw us closer to him. So that's what the verse says. It doesn't mean everything's going to turn out rosy, but it does mean that everything that happens, in some sense, is for our good because God's behind it. The good of those who love him. Transitions, changes, ups and downs may not always feel good, but they are for our good. And whether those transitions are a change in your health, a change in your job, a conflict in your family, parents who are getting older, needing your help, whatever it is, they're not fun, and they may feel like a pit, but God's down in that pit with you and will walk you through it. When those things that happen are part of his plan, they are good, and therefore our good. So whatever you're going through, those ups and downs, and you're questioning and wondering, why? Or you're like Joseph in the desert, and you're looking up at the sky going, hello, where are you? God's there with you. Doesn't make it easy, but it does make it survivable. And on the other end, and I hate to say this, but it might be 20 years down the road, like Joseph, you'll be able to look back and you'll understand exactly what God was doing in those trials. So remember, like Joseph, God is with you. He promised he will never leave you nor forsake you. And in the end, maybe 20 years from now, hopefully not, you'll be able to look back and see God was in perfect control through everything you're going through today. I hope that encourages you. It encourages me, and I love this story. I think I love the story because I'm the youngest of all brothers, and I don't, kind of relate to it. But when things are dark and I don't understand why, this is a story that can encourage you. You may go through a lot of ups and downs, but God will be there right alongside you the entire time. Thank you.